Hello, I'm James O'Halloran, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dickon Hall, art historian and writer, to discuss a very fine painting by Colin Middleton that features in our sale of Irish art on March the 27th. So you're very welcome, Dickon.
Thank you very much.
So the work that we're going to look at today is lot number 8 in our upcoming sale, and it's an oil on canvas dating to around about 1960, I understand, and it is entitled K Knitting, and that's K as in the letter K. So what's the background to this picture, Dickon?
It was painted in Lisbon, as you said, around 1960. Colin Middleton had moved there to take up a job as head of art at Friends School, but during that time, in a way, he was as busy as a painter as he'd ever been. During the 60s, having had that sort of great time with Waddington in the 50s, there was then a sort of short period when he sort of wasn't exhibiting so much, and then in 1960, late 50s, 60s, things really took off again. But his painting had changed quite a lot in that period, and for example, the K in the painting is his wife, Kathleen, Kate. And during this period, there were a lot more sort of intimate paintings around the family home of, for example, her knitting, of reading, of one of their daughters reading. And that leads on to a sort of well-known and very important series of paintings of Kate playing the piano. It's a really interesting period and an underrated period, I think, as well.
Yeah, there's a very strong sort of cubist feel to the work. I mean, this wonderful patchwork almost of pattern. But I wonder, is it as much his background as a designer, in the textile industry? Of course, he worked with his father in damask design and manufacturing, as much as as the influence of Cubism from his experience in London and Belgium in the 1930s. Where do you think this comes from? Is it a remembered work?
I think you're right, because I think it has both influences. I think, as you know, he was very interested in European modernism, very progressive painter, and while often that's seen as being a surrealist influence, he was very interested in Cubism as well. And there is certainly a technical element, that sort of faceting, that breaking down of the canvas, the flattening of the picture space is very Cubist. But also, I think around the late 50s, early 60s, he did introduce that element of design back into his paintings. So there is an interest in pattern. There's a sort of repeated sort of patterns and forms. So I think the two have come together in the painting.
When you look at Middleton's his career, some of the comments that were made by critics over the years while he was exhibiting in the various exhibitions, there seemed to have been sort of a certain amount of reaction against his ability, for want of a better word, to move from one style to another, and quite distinctive styles. So he's like an artist who never got stuck. He was constantly striving to move on, or perhaps just to experiment with other areas. In the 1960s, where does that fit in terms of his progression as a painter?
Yeah, I mean, you've put your finger in the way on that sort of element of criticism that sort of doesn't. To me, it is sort of slightly unfair, because I think Middleton was always experimenting. He was very restless as a painter and wanted to continue to develop, and was also someone who engaged very much with what's happening in the world around him and in art around him. So when he was growing up, there were a lot of these influences which he then went on to explore. But I think there is a very distinctive voice, and I think in the 60s, that element of design comes back in, and there are things that Middleton did in the 60s that make his work very unique at that time. You see him working on these square boards often. You see the sort of gesso prepared boards and canvases, which mean the painting has this sort of other pattern almost going on beneath the main image. There are things to me that are intrinsically Middleton that run throughout his career. The emphasis on the female figure, which at this point became more the specific women around him, but often is a very universal sort of way of bringing the female archetype into his painting. So I think when you look at the whole body of his career and you break it up into these periods, you can see why he's doing certain things at certain times. And the 60s, I think the influence of design he allows to come back in, and it transforms his painting into something quite different in that decade, but still something that belongs with the work before it and with what he went on to do in the 70s.
Right. And very early in the life of this painting, it was exhibited in Belfast in the SEMA show in 61. What was that exhibition? Because it's not something that we come across that often. Certainly, by way of exhibition history for a lot of pictures. But it was obviously quite a significant sort of organization or exhibition.
Yes, I mean, it was the forerunner of the Arts Council in Northern Ireland, and was a sort of, in a way, a wartime organisation. John Hewitt had been very influential in setting it up in Northern Ireland, and it shows Middleton's stature. I think during the 60s there were 5 exhibitions that the Arts Council or SEMA organised. One of those toured to Scotland. This exhibition was also in that. Sorry, this painting was also in that exhibition. So it's obviously a painting that the 61 exhibition, it was included in that, and then was also in the retrospective that covered the years 1960 to 1970. So it's interesting to see what Middleton selected always for exhibitions, that the paintings that he felt showed his progression, that showed a certain achievement, that he was a part of all that selection. But the 1961 show, like all his exhibitions, is something very intact and whole about it. When you look at the pictures in it, you feel, well, these all belong together, and there's a sort of consistency to them all.
Sure, yeah, and I think that it's always nice for collectors to acquire paintings which have a good exhibition history. It's not just to have an interesting provenance, but an exhibition history is a wonderful addition to one's appreciation of a work, particularly when you can try and get behind the sort of the ideas of why that would have been selected for such an important exhibition. So it's a wonderful, and it's a confirmation of just how much of a quality work K knitting is. So thank you so much, Dickon, for your insights, as ever. And this painting will be offered, as I say, on the 27th of March, and it has an estimate of 15,000 to 20,000 euro. So we look forward to talking to you again soon, Dickon, and thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. Thanks.